Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a modern geopolitical reality that completely shatters the traditional illusion of physical borders. We're looking at a world where borders aren't just drawn on a map anymore, they're coded into servers that might sit thousands of miles away.
So, we're kicking things off with a massive, high-stakes question today. How sovereign can a country really be if a foreign power can simply flip a switch and turn off its critical infrastructure? I mean, do nations actually control their own digital backbone?
To really grasp the visceral shock of this digital kill switch, imagine the case of Judge Nicholas Guizhou. When he was sanctioned by the U.S. government for his work at the International Criminal Court, he instantly lost access to his digital life. He described it as being sent back to the 1990s. His Expedia travel reservations were abruptly canceled, forcing him to pay for hotels in cash. Separately, ICC prosecutor Karim Khan actually had his Microsoft email disconnected. Now, regardless of the underlying politics here, it starkly illustrates what happens when an external entity can just pull the plug on your digital existence.
And this vulnerability extends way beyond individual accounts, right into matters of national security. During a critical period, when the U.S. administration halted intelligence sharing to pressure a peace deal, U.S.-based Maxar Technologies restricted Ukraine's access to vital satellite imagery. This sudden kill switch moment severely hampered Ukrainian drone pilots, and unfortunately, it coincided with a deadly attack on Kryvyi Rih. It's a harsh reminder that military capacity isn't just about the physical hardware you own, it's heavily dependent on the cloud services you're permitted to access.
Part 1. The illusion of local control. Let's look at the clash between where your data physically sits and who actually holds the legal power over it.
You know, you'll often hear major tech firms boast about localized infrastructure, a practice experts call sovereignty washing. Basically, they claim that building a localized data center grants you sovereignty. But fundamentally, this totally fails to neutralize foreign legal jurisdiction. It just creates a false sense of autonomy, because the ultimate ownership and the legal accountability remains abroad.
The crucial takeaway here is this stark contrast. Physical location absolutely does not equal legal protection. You could have your data locked down in a highly secure facility in Frankfurt or Paris, but that doesn't grant you immunity from extraterritorial legal requests. If the parent company is headquartered in the U.S., they are legally obligated to comply with U.S. mandates, which essentially overrides local protections like the GDPR.
And look, this isn't just some hypothetical late-night debate. Extraterritorial laws from the U.S., things like the Cloud Act, FISA Section 702, and sanctions law, alongside China's data security and cybersecurity laws, legally compel their domestic tech companies to comply with state mandates. It genuinely doesn't matter where the daily operations or the data itself are physically located. This legal reach effectively bypasses local sovereignty, making foreign law the ultimate authority over localized data.
Part 2. Trapped in the cloud. Let's explore exactly how deep this dependency goes, because as the old IT joke goes, there is no cloud. It's just someone else's computer, and right now, someone else has all the leverage. Get this staggering reality. 4/5, that's 80% of all European Union cloud and software spending goes directly to non-European providers. This represents a massive digital trade deficit. But more importantly, it highlights a severe lack of vendor diversity. Europe is essentially funding the dominance of external tech giants rather than building its own resilient infrastructure.
And when you look at the geopolitical data, it paints a pretty alarming picture. Out of 28 European national defense agencies, 16 are at a high risk to a potential U.S. kill switch. They rely heavily on direct contracts with U.S. tech companies or use air-gapping techniques that, quite frankly, experts note are often completely ineffective against sanctions or extraterritorial laws. Only a single nation, Austria, actually sits in the lower risk category.
Now, you might be thinking, well, why don't they just switch providers? Well, they run straight into a massive roadblock called data gravity. This lock-in means that as data accumulates with a specific cloud vendor, high egress fees and proprietary formats keep users totally trapped. It becomes incredibly complicated and wildly expensive to move. It's a massive barrier to achieving any kind of true digital autonomy.
Part 3. Energy grids in the crosshairs. Now we shift from legal theory and defense right into physical, everyday reality to see how this exposes critical national infrastructure.
Because these threats, they are already playing out in real time. Take, for instance, a Russian-origin DDoS attack that temporarily disrupted digital services at Italy's energy company A2A, creating widespread operational uncertainty. Or over in Spain, where a data breach at Iberdrola compromised the personal data of 1.3 million customers. When physical infrastructure relies on outsourced tech, the attack surface expands massively.
The energy sector is particularly exposed here. We're dealing with decades-old protocols, things like Modbus and DNP3, that often transmit data in plain text. And because of the deep integration of third-party vendors for operational technology and cloud platforms, a single compromised software update can ripple across interconnected European networks almost instantly. That dependency makes it incredibly difficult to contain an incident once it starts.
Part 4. Reclaiming digital sovereignty. Okay, we've mapped out the threats, so let's focus on the actionable countermeasures needed to secure a nation's digital flank.
The good news is, nations are fighting back. They are actively combating this digital colonialism by embracing open-source software. Italy aggressively migrated 150,000 defense PCs to LibreOffice. Austria did the exact same thing with 16,000 military workstations. Germany has 60,000 teachers using the OpenDesk suite right now. And on a much broader scale, Europe is developing sovereign alternatives like the Gaia X cloud ecosystem to cut dependencies on those expensive proprietary hyperscalers.
Of course, actually getting out isn't a walk in the park. Security experts warn that mitigating vendor lock-in requires a rigorously planned exit strategy. You absolutely cannot just rely on purely manual assessments or those vague promises of free egress traffic. Organizations have to leverage automated solutions to map their assets and bring in expert architects. The ability to seamlessly leave a cloud provider needs to be treated as a vital security necessity, not just an afterthought.
To avoid being held hostage by foreign policy shifts, governments need a rock-solid roadmap. First up, aggressively audit those current cloud dependencies. They need to legally mandate that critical workloads operate exclusively on infrastructure fully owned and controlled within their borders. We're talking phased migration plans by 2030, and frankly, a strict exclusion of platforms that engage in that sovereignty washing we talked about earlier.
Bringing it all together, the big takeaway from our explainer today is this. Technology is no longer just an IT issue. It is the primary battleground of geopolitics. Deep reliance on external technologies exposes a region to a virtual kill switch, where dependency directly equates to a massive reduction in national leverage.
So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Take a step back and reconsider what borders actually mean in the digital age. Because if your essential systems can just be shut down by foreign decree, are you truly sovereign? Or are you just renting your independence? Thanks so much for joining us for The Explainer.